In our headlines on this Thursday, August 28th, here in South Korea. The central bank holds steady its benchmark interest rate at 2.5% and raises its outlook for South Korea's growth this year to 0.9% in light of rising exports and rebounding consumer spending. And President Lee Jae-myung returns home in the wee hours of this Thursday following a separate summits with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and US President Donald Trump, respectively. Meanwhile, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirms the Trump administration's interest in securing a stake in other industries such as shipbuilding after sealing a deal with Intel last week. We start here on the national front today with a number of critical decisions by the central bank. Now, BOK officials have decided to keep their interest rate frozen while raising their growth forecast for the local economy this year. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has details.
The Bank of Korea announced a continued rate freeze of the country's base interest rate on Thursday morning after cutting the rate by 25 basis points in May and holding it steady in July. The rate freeze was made as concerns remain over surging house prices and rising household debt. After the decision, the interest rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. stayed at around 2 percentage points, as the Federal Reserve also kept rates unchanged in late July, citing inflation concerns amid uncertainty from U.S. tariffs. On the same day, the Bank of Korea modestly increased its 2025 GDP growth forecast to 0.9%. The forecast is 0.1 of a percentage point higher than its 0.8% growth rate projection in May. This is the first time the central bank has raised its growth forecast for the year after having continuously lowered it since November 2023. The bank explained that the upward revision was driven by stronger consumption and solid export gains, even as construction investment remained weaker than expected. In its outlook, the BOK forecasts the country's quarterly growth at -0.2% for the first quarter, 0.6% for the second, 1.1% for the third, and 0.2% for the fourth. Although the institution projected a higher growth rate, the looming risks from U.S. tariffs still lie ahead. Despite reducing the level of uncertainties after South Korea and the U.S. negotiated the rates at 15% on July 30th, the overall economic impact could come later. According to the BOK report on the impact of South Korea's economy, which was released the same day, U.S. tariffs could cut 0.45 percentage points off GDP growth in 2025 and 0.6 percentage points in 2026 compared to a scenario where there were no tariffs. The report also noted that South Korea's high dependence on U.S. exports makes the country particularly vulnerable to the U.S. tariffs. It said while initial impacts have been muted by delays in cost absorption by firms, economic conditions could get worse, with global manufacturing orders already contracting. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung is back home from his trip to the U.S. and Japan, having landed here in the country in the wee hours of this Thursday. That being said, our Park Hyo-bin recaps some of the key moments and achievements from his latest bilateral engagements.
President Lee Jae-myung returned home after his high-stakes summits to the U.S. and Japan at around 1 a.m. on Thursday, greeted with handshakes and applause following his arrival at Seoul Airport in Seongnam. His 6-day trip is being hailed as a major step in strengthening trilateral cooperation with Washington and Tokyo. There had been concerns after President Trump's social media post suggesting that a purge or revolution was unfolding in South Korea. Nevertheless, the meeting was seen as a major achievement, opening the door to renewed dialogue with North Korea, as Seoul pledged to work to facilitate a potential meeting between Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
대통령께서 피스메이커를 하시면 저는 페이스메이커로 열심히 지원하겠습니다.
That's good. We can do big.
Trump also expressed willingness to meet Kim before the year's end, raising hopes for renewed momentum toward peace on the Korean peninsula. With Trump set to attend the APEC summit in Gyeongju this October, prospects of a U.S.-North Korea meeting remain open.
I will do that, and we'll have talks. He'd like to meet with me.
He also made clear that his administration is moving away from Seoul's past security with the U.S., economy with China stance, instead placing trilateral cooperation with Washington and Tokyo at the center of its diplomacy.
And then there are some critics, honestly, who say you're too pro-China. Could you respond to that?
또 미국의 정책이 명확하게 이제 중국을 견제하는 방향으로 가면서 한국도 과거와 같은 태도를 취할 수는 없는 상태가 됐습니다.
On the economic front, he stressed cooperation in shipbuilding. Before returning home, he visited the Hanwha Philly shipyard in Philadelphia and touted the so-called Make America Shipbuilding Great Again project, underlining the role of South Korean companies in revitalizing U.S. shipbuilding through investment, workforce training, and modernized technology.
한국의 조선소들은 미국 조선소에 투자하고 우수한 인력을 양성하는 한편으로 현대화된 공정 기술이 미국에 뿌리 내릴 수 있도록 도울 것입니다.
Observers note that Lee also managed to avoid an immediate security bill from Washington during the visit. Notably, Lee's decision to visit Tokyo before Washington is seen as having bolstered trilateral coordination. He emphasized restoring high-level diplomacy with Japan. And for the first time in 17 years, the leaders of South Korea and Japan issued a joint written agreement, signaling a stronger commitment to improving bilateral ties. Park Hyubin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the consensus among pundits is that the summit between President Lee Jae-myung and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump was a success. In fact, one scholar here believes the summit may serve to advance regional diplomacy. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young has more.
President Lee Jae-myung's report with U.S. leader Donald Trump underscores his pragmatic diplomacy, potentially easing strains in Seoul's trade and regional affairs. According to Professor Lee Wang-yi, who leads the Asia Unification Institute, Korea has passed its first major diplomatic test as Lee and Trump, in their first summit this week, established a warm relationship. While the result lacked clarity on sensitive trade areas, the summit provided reassurance for Korean firms.
With no joint press conference by Presidents Lee and Trump, there's been curiosity about the outcome. But the July agreement will stand with no changes confirmed. That means much of the uncertainty that had worried businesses has now been eased.
With the two leaders both ready to work together on sectors like shipbuilding and energy, their summit also deepened strategic cooperation, pushing bilateral ties towards a future-oriented comprehensive alliance. Lee's stopover in Tokyo before Washington also set the mood for closer trilateral cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. While some feared this could sharpen tensions with Beijing and Pyongyang, the expert noted the Lee-Trump summit provided Seoul with clout to pursue regional peace and stability. On North Korea, Trump responded positively to Lee's call for renewed dialogue with Pyongyang, with a potential meeting during this year's gathering of Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation members in South Korea's Gyeongju. An early meeting could fast-track progress to diffuse tensions on the peninsula.
President Trump once mentioned building a Trump Tower or resort during talks with Jong-un. If U.S.-North Korea ties progress, constructing a Trump Tower in the north could have major symbolic value. Unlike other projects, it would take less time and could deliver results within Trump's current term.
And then there's China. Amid the intensifying US-China rivalry and unease in Beijing over Seoul and Washington further strengthening their alliance, Trump went so far as to suggest he and Lee visit Beijing together. That reinforced Lee's message that South Korea must not be forced to choose between the US and China, but instead manage both relationships with stability. Seoul's role as a regional mediator is critical. President Lee has invited both Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping to the APEC leaders meeting.
This APEC may center on U.S.-China, U.S.-North Korea, and Korea-China summits. Korea-U.S. relations must go well for Korea-China ties to improve. I believe APEC will prove Korea, U.S. and Korea-China relations are complementary.
Having passed the first test of pragmatic diplomacy, the challenge ahead is whether the Lee administration can turn the momentum into practical progress for regional peace and stability ahead of APEC in October. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In other news, the Trump administration may seek a stake in its shipbuilding industry. Our Ian Jin covers this intention and its broader implications.
Following the acquisition of a near 10% stake in chipmaker Intel last week, the Trump administration has now revealed that it plans to obtain stakes in other industries. During an interview broadcast on Thursday, local time, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent responded no when asked whether the government was considering taking a stake in NVIDIA. Instead, he suggested the shipbuilding industry, calling it a critical sector that would contribute to the United States becoming self-sufficient. Given that South Korea has pledged to invest $150 billion in the U.S. shipbuilding sector as part of a partnership dubbed Make America Shipbuilding Great Again, this could have an impact on the Korean economy. While the Trump administration has expressed intentions to acquire stakes in U.S. companies in core industries to revitalize domestic manufacturing, it appears no specific projects have been finalized yet or announced. Meanwhile, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the key to considering where the U.S. should take equity stakes in companies is whether the country adds fundamental value to the business in consideration. In addition, during an interview on Tuesday, he also mentioned the possibility of acquiring stakes in defense contractors, saying that there was a monstrous discussion about defense. However, to this, Treasury Secretary Bessent expressed doubts on whether stakes in defense companies were necessary, saying that it would need to be seen whether they are fulfilling their mission in terms of providing adequate and timely deliveries to the U.S. military. Such disagreements suggest that further internal coordination is needed, and the Trump administration's decision on government equity acquisitions is still in its early stages. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
And the Trump administration is seeking limits on the length of U.S. visas. The Department of Homeland Security announced Wednesday the initiative looks to affect visas for international students, cultural exchange visitors, and foreign journalists. Under the plan, student and exchange visas will be capped at 4 years, while journalist visas will be restricted to about 8 months or about 3 months for Chinese nationals. All visa holders will then be required to apply for extensions instead of being allowed a flexible stay provision, as is the case under current guidelines. And the U.S. has included 2 more individuals and 2 more institutions onto its blacklist for working to advance North Korea's hostile weapons ambitions. Our Treasury has details.
Those newly added to the U.S. Treasury sanctions list are 2 individuals and 2 firms. On Wednesday, the U.S. sanctioned Russian national Vitaly Sergeyevich Andreyev, who helped transfer money to a company under sanctions, and North Korean diplomat Kim Ung-sun, who, together with Andreyev, carried out several financial deals, including cashing out about $600,000 in cryptocurrency. It also sanctioned Seonyang Kumpunli Network Technology Corporation, which is accused of acting as a front company for the scheme. Also on the sanctions list was Korea Shinjin Trading Corporation, accused of sending instructions from Pyongyang for dispatching North Korean IT workers overseas. The U.S. Treasury says the North continues to use overseas IT workers to hack American companies, stealing data and demanding money through scams. Some workers have implanted malicious code inside company networks to steal proprietary technology and sensitive data. Washington believes the illegal profits from these actions were used to help fund Pyongyang's weapons of mass destruction and missile programs. North Korea has been using fake documents and stolen identities to get remote jobs abroad, and its methods are becoming more advanced with the help of artificial intelligence. In response, Seoul, Washington and Tokyo remain united in their joint efforts to counter the illicit activities of North Korea's IT workers. The 3 countries reaffirmed their commitment to enhancing their coordination and pledged to work closely with the private sector. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
And North Korea's Kim Jong-un will be in China next week for Beijing's Victory Day military parade. His attendance has been officially confirmed by both North Korea and China on this Thursday. This will mark the first time for a North Korean leader to attend the event since 1959. Kim will join 26 world leaders, including Russia's Vladimir Putin. Now, China's Victory Day celebrates the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. Over in the city of Incheon, rival political parties launched their two-day workshops on this Thursday in preparation of the regular session of the National Assembly in September. At the ruling Democratic Party's event, the Lee Jae-myung administration's policy directions and strategies for AI were addressed. Party leader Chung Chung-rae reaffirmed that enhancing livelihoods and pursuing reforms of the prosecution, media and judiciary will be the party's priorities during the regular session. And in a separate workshop, the main opposition People Power Party focused on strengthening unity under its new leadership and checking the policies of the Lee Jae-myung administration. PP leader Chang Dong-hyuk asserted that the workshop would seek to redefine the party's direction and reinforce its resolve. Over in the U.S., a tragic shooting killed 2 children and injured 17 others during Mass to mark the first week of class at a Catholic school in Minneapolis. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
2 children were killed and 17 others injured when a shooter opened fire during morning mass at the Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis on Wednesday local time. Police say the shooter fired dozens of rounds through church windows just before 8:30 a.m., targeting children and parishioners sitting in the pews. The victims include 14 children between the ages of 6 and 15 and 3 parishioners in their 80s. The 2 children who died were 8 and 10 years old. Authorities say all of the injured are expected to survive.
At this point, we know we have a total of 19 victims from this tragedy. 2 were young children, ages 8 and 10, that were sitting in the pews at Mass when they were shot and killed. They were pronounced deceased on the scene.
Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara added that staff members acted heroically, moving students under pews and helping evacuate them within minutes once it was safe. The FBI identified the shooter as a 23-year-old Robin Westman, who died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound at the scene. Westman was armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, all of which were purchased recently and legally. Court records also show that Westman, who identified as a female, was born Robert Westman. In the wake of the tragedy, Pope Leo XIV expressed his profound sorrow. In a message delivered over telegram to Archbishop Bernard Hebda, the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis, the Pope commended the souls of the 2 children to God and offered prayers for the wounded, first responders, clergy, and loved ones. The shooting took place during a mass as the school entered the first week of the new school year. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back here in South Korea, we turn now to the southern port city of Busan, where government officials and industry experts are turning to AI to come up with productive energy solutions. Our Park Jun-an was there.
With AI on the rise, can the world keep up with the soaring demand for energy? The 2025 World Climate Industry Expo in Busan is tackling that very question, showcasing how far we've come and how much work still lies ahead.
Today, in the world, there is a big race among the major economic powers in terms of being a leader for AI. The AI can help us in order to maximize the utilization rate of the grids by optimization. There is no AI without energy, but AI can also help the energy.
During the interview, Regional President of RWE's Asia-Pacific Division, Jens Orfeld, shared his vision about the growing demand for energy for AI and ways to sustainably acquire energy.
It's very energy intensive, and therefore if we use conventional energy resources to power AI, there's a significant risk that AI becomes part of the problem in an energy transition point of view, and therefore it's very, very important that as we advance AI, that we also advance the technologies that will ensure that it's based on sustainable energy consumption.
The company also mentioned that creating energy can help solve the Korean government's and companies' high dependency on energy imports.
A major advantage is also domesticating your energy production, making yourself less vulnerable for imports, and thereby increasing your energy security, which is a very, very important point in the current geopolitical environment as well.
And some exhibitions are doing just that as they showcase their newest technology to produce cleaner energy. As you can see here, turbines like this use only natural gas to generate electricity. The company said it plans to develop hydrogen-powered turbines by 2028, which have zero carbon emissions. It's not only the energy producers that are concerned with the global climate crisis. Tech giants like Nvidia, Google, and Microsoft were present to demonstrate their vision of addressing energy security concerns and adopting AI to combat climate challenges.
So our goal is to deliver more and more performance for each watt that our customers use. So AI is here, that's inevitable, and it requires energy. And the way we tackle those is, number one, to make sure that we have access to energy for the AI so that we can solve the solutions, so that we can utilize AI for the public good as soon as possible.
The application of AI and its technology is reshaping not only how we live and work, but also how we power our world. It's the ultimate chicken and egg question. AI needs energy, and energy needs AI to be sustainable. Park Junan, Arirang News, Busan.
On the entertainment front, the impact of KPop Demon Hunters on South Korea's K-pop itself in the US has been tangible. According to music data company Luminate, streams of K-pop surpassed 300 million as of August 7th, nearly double the number of streams seen on June 20th when the Netflix animation was released. A graph by the company shows the popularity of the movie's soundtrack solidified the K-pop genre's presence in the American market.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. At the United Nations Security Council, all members except the United States have declared that the famine in Gaza is a man-made crisis. During a Security Council session on Wednesday, representatives from 14 of the 15 current members issued a joint statement calling the situation in Gaza a famine caused by human actions. The statement also condemned the use of food deprivation as a weapon of war, asserting that this practice is clearly prohibited under international humanitarian law. They called for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire and release of all hostages, an increase in humanitarian aid, and for Israel to lift all restrictions on aid delivery immediately. According to the latest data from the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification System, nearly a quarter of Gaza's population is currently experiencing famine. In response, Israel challenged the report, labeling it as biased and based on incomplete data, while the U.S. representative at the Council questioned the credibility of the findings. The leaders of France, Germany, and Poland visited Moldova to mark its 34th Independence Day and underscore their support for Moldova's EU accession. French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk met with Moldova's President Maia Sandu on Wednesday to back the former Soviet Republic in its pro-European course. This comes amid intensified Russian interference in its upcoming parliamentary elections on September 28. All three leaders emphasized Moldova's path to EU membership and praised its resilience against hybrid threats from Moscow. President Sandu warned that independence is fragile, citing risks from disinformation, cyber attacks, and foreign-financed unrest. She said independence is not guaranteed, it depends on the choices we make. The Russian Defense Ministry said Wednesday that for the first time, Russian and Chinese diesel-electric submarines successfully completed a joint patrol in the Asia-Pacific region. This mission was initiated in early August, immediately following the Maritime Interaction 2025 joint naval exercises conducted by Russia and China in the East Sea. The objective of the joint patrol is to strengthen naval cooperation between the two countries, enhance peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region, and protect the maritime economic interests of both nations. Finally, the Guinness World Records, a British record listing platform, celebrated its 70th anniversary on Wednesday, marking 7 decades since the first edition was published on August 27, 1955. To commemorate the milestone, the organization unveiled 17 new unclaimed record categories, inviting the public to attempt feats ranging from the fastest 400-meter sack race, furthest bottle flip, to the most high fives in 30 seconds. The Guinness World Records history began as a way to resolve pub debates and has since transformed into a global authority on extraordinary achievements, continuing to celebrate human ambition in different forms. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
In Seoul, the heat has eased off at night, with tropical nights cooling down for the last 2 days. However, the heat wave has been continuing during the day, with the temperature falling higher than 33 degrees Celsius across the country. Currently, heat wave warnings have been issued for Jeollanam-do and Gyeongsangnam-do provinces and Jeju Island, and heat wave advisories in the west and most parts of Gyeongsangbuk-do province, including the Seoul metropolitan area. Ultraviolet rays will also stay high in most parts of the country and very high around the East Coast and West Coast areas. Tomorrow morning, Seoul and Busan will start off at 26 degrees, Jeju at 27 degrees. Seoul will rise up to 31 degrees, Chuncheon at 30 degrees, Gyeongju and Daegu 35 degrees. For the time being, there will be frequent showers throughout the inland areas. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.